there is a mistake that most men make, not a dramatic one, not one you can point to in a single moment. It happens slowly, over years, and by the time a man sees it clearly, really sees it, a significant portion of his life has already passed through it. And the hardest part is this. It wasn't carelessness. It wasn't weakness. It was something far more understandable than that. I wanted to try to describe something that I think a lot of men recognize, but almost never put into words. There's a way of moving through your own life that looks like living, but isn't quite. You're present for the events, the meetings, the dinners, the weekends, the milestones. You handle things, you show up. By any external measure, you are there. But some deeper layer of actual presence is running on a slight remove. There's like a pane of glass between you and your own experience. You can see everything happening. You manage it well, but you're not quite inside it. And the ears move past that glass, while the real you waits for conditions that keep not quite arriving. I think this is one of the most common experiences a man can have in his 40s, and one of the most disorienting, because from the outside his life is real, the relationships are real, the work is real, the years are undeniably, irreversibly real. But internally, there is a nagging sense that he has been slightly beside himself for most of it, managing it, administering it, moving pieces around the board with competence and consistency, without ever quite dropping into it fully, without ever quite allowing himself to be as affected by his own life as his life deserved. The joy kept at arm's length, the grief processed quickly and filed away, the love expressed functionally more often than it was actually felt. And one day, usually after enough distance has accumulated, he looks back and realizes that the life he lived so carefully is also somehow the life he was never fully inside. Maybe you felt this too. Not all the time, just sometimes, in the quiet moments. A sense of watching your own story from just slightly too far away. But here is the strange part. The distance most men keep from their own lives isn't a character flaw. It isn't emotional immaturity or avoidance or numbness. At least not at the beginning. At the beginning, it's something much more reasonable. Much more reasonable than that. It's protection. Men learn very early that a full emotional presence is expensive. That being truly inside your experience, letting it move you, letting it land, letting it matter the way it matters, opens you to things that are hard to function through. Grief, disappointment, the vulnerability of actual love, the exposure of caring deeply about something that might not work out. And so, a distance forms, functional, manageable, protective, and it works. For a while, it genuinely works. But most men never notice when the protection becomes the problem, when the distance that once kept you operational starts to keep you from being alive. And this is where things become interesting, because the life mistake most men realize too late isn't something they did. It's something they withheld. Here is a way of thinking about it that took me a long time to see. Most men relate their lives the way a good manager relates to a project. Oversight, planning, problem solving, monitoring progress, adjusting when things go off course. And those skills are real and necessary. They build things, they protect people, they keep the world functioning. But a life is not a project. And the people in your life are not resources to be managed. And the moments, the actual irreplaceable moments, don't respond to oversight. They respond to presence. Full, unguarded, slightly inconvenient presence. The kind where you're not calculating the next move, or managing how you come across, or keeping one part of your mind on the problem waiting at work. Just there, receiving what's actually happening, allowing it to land. And this is where things become interesting, because most men are extraordinarily good and at management, and genuinely underdeveloped at presence. Not because they don't care, because nobody ever told them that presence was a skill that required cultivation. That is something to practice. They were taught to perform, to provide, to protect, to produce. Nobody told them to just be there. And something changes after 40 that makes this particular mistake harder to keep making. The moments start to feel finite in a new way. When you are younger, there's an implicit assumption that the meaningful moments are ahead. The children are still young. The parents are still here. The relationships still have decades of time in them. But after 40, that assumption starts to quietly revise itself. The children are getting older, faster than expected. The parents are in different chapters now. The friendships require more effort to maintain and less can be assumed. And the man who has been relating to his life from a slight distance start to feel the cost of that distance in a new way. A way that he didn't before. Not dramatically, not in a single moment, just as a gradual, persistent awareness that the time for being slightly absent from his own life is running shorter than he thought. Most men feel this and don't quite name it. They just notice a new urgency, a new willingness to put down the phone, to stay at the dinner table a little longer, to say the things that they would have managed before. Something in them has started to understand what the distance was costing. Here is the psychological truth at the center of this. The life mistake most men realize too late is not a failure of love. Most of these men loved their families deeply, loved their work, loved the life they were building. The mistake was withholding. The persistent, habitual, well-intentioned withholding of their actual presence, their actual reactions, their actual fears, their actual wonder and grief and tenderness and confusion. The full, undenied, unmanaged human being who was always underneath the functional version. And the people in their lives, the ones who needed that person, who were hungry for that person, got the managed version instead. Year after year. Not because the man didn't care, but because he'd learned somewhere along the way that the managed version was what a man was supposed to offer. Competent, steady, unshakable, the rock and rocks, it turns out, are very hard to be close to. Very hard to feel genuinely known by. Very hard to love in the way that love actually requires, which is the vulnerability of being fully seen by another person. And the man who withholds himself in the name of being strong ends up, over time, being alone in a room full of people who have learned to accept the version he offers because it's the only one he knows how to give. So let me ask you something. Is there someone in your life who you love genuinely, who you have loved for years, who doesn't quite know what's actually going on inside you? Not because you're hiding anything dramatic, just because you've never quite found the way to let them inside the real version, the one that worries, the one that wonders, the one that sometimes feels the full weight of everything and doesn't have the language for it. If the honest answer is yes, I don't want you to feel guilty about it. But I do want you to feel it. Because that gap between the version of you that the person knows and the version that actually exists is the life mistake I am describing. And it's not too late to close it. Not through a conversation, not through some announcement, just through slightly more willingness to be affected, to let things land, to say the true thing when the true thing is sitting right there. That's all it takes. And it changed everything. Not just for the people around you. For you. The man who realized this too late all describe a version of the same thing. Not that they regret what they built, but that they wish they had been more inside it while it was being built. More present at the table, more available to be known, more willing to let the people they loved actually see them. Not the capable version, not the problem-solving version, the real version, the one that was always there, waiting behind the management and the competence, hoping someone would ask for it. And the tragedy, if there is one, isn't that nobody asked. Is that when they did ask, something in him deflected, turned into a joke, changed the subject, offered information instead of feeling, because that's what he knew how to do. The good news, and I believe this genuinely, is that the deflection is a habit, not a personality. And habits, with enough honesty and enough willingness, can change, even at 45, even at 52, even now. I think about the version of myself that spent years being very good at my life from a slight distance. And I don't say that with regret exactly. I understand why it happened. But I also know what it cost in moments that passed while I was managing them. In people who wanted more of me than I knew how to give. And what I know now, what I'm still learning, is that distance was never protection. It was just distance. And their life that was happening. On the other side of it, the actual, irreplaceable, only happens once. Life was always more worth being inside than understood at the time.